Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, good mid-morning to everyone who's joined this session. Thank you for taking the time to join SunCup and this session. And I would really encourage you to drop a chat in the chat box. Just tell us where you're dialing in from today. Organization, name, country. Would really love to hear where you all lovely people are coming from. I would now like to hand over to Tapiwa to take us forward. Over to you, Tapiwa.
Thanks so much, George. Thanks everybody for making the time to join today. It's nice to see that people are trickling into the session. I'm just gonna share my screen here. Yeah, so maybe by way of introduction, everybody, my name is Tapiwa Nyandoro. I am with the Impact Hub Global Network. Within the organization, I support our partnerships effort within the Africa region. I also have a couple of colleagues supporting me here as co-moderators on the session from our organization, including Kevin Richardson, who you'll see on your screens, and also Mariana Nunes as well. So as part of the Alliance that you can see on your screen, which is the World Economic Forum COVID Response Alliance for Social Entrepreneurs, we stepped up as an Alliance member, as Impact Hub, to host one of the first activities within the sort of COVID Alliance's work over the next year. And so what we wanted to do is to bring together some people from within the Alliance, some entrepreneurs from the region, to share some experiences that they've been going through sort of in the past year. And then hopefully we could have a nice discussion through our keynote speakers, our panelists, and as well as some sort of breakouts in which the audience will be able to participate. So we're hoping to have a very interactive session with you over the next 90 minutes. So I hope that in addition to putting your details within the chat, that you continue to sort of put your questions in there, put your comments in there, and interact as much as possible through the chat window. So on the call, as I mentioned, we have some additional collaborators for the session. So you'll see that Ifi Omuna is with us. She is the program lead for Nourishing Africa, and you're going to be hearing quite a bit from her during her keynote speech. We also have Abisola Oladapo, who's the founder of an organization called Mumspring. Caroline De Bruyne is here. She's the head of this great alliance that we've been forming over the past 12 months. Drew Van Glaan is here. He's the executive director of the Collaborative for Frontier Finance. And then finally, we'll have Dr. Frank Aswani, the CEO of the Africa Venture Philanthropy Alliance, also joining us sort of as we go along here during the session. So the question is, what is the Alliance? What are we talking about here? So the Alliance has been coming together over the past year or so under the leadership of Caroline and her team at the World Economic Forum. Right now, the Alliance includes around 85 members, Alliance members, who are all working basically to support social entrepreneurs. And within the Alliance, we represent about 90,000 social entrepreneurs across the globe who basically have beneficiaries reaching a number just under 2 billion. And so some of the names that you might see as Alliance members are mentioned on this slide here. Some of them might pop out at you. As I mentioned, the Africa Venture Philanthropy Alliance is there, Impact Hub is there, Root Capital is there, Unilever is there, and some others. You can take a look for yourself here to see some of the ones that you might recognize. But I wanted to share also sort of what we're working on as an alliance and what our action agenda is. So as you can see on the left, it clearly explains sort of the direction in which we are working over this coming year. So firstly, one of the objectives is to make the voices of social entrepreneurs and their communities heard. And we're going to do that during this session by ensuring that you hear from local entrepreneurs as well. So you can look forward to that in the next few minutes. Secondly, we're preparing to respond, recover, and reset, taking the opportunity to shape the new tomorrow or the new normal or the new economy or the next economy, whatever you have framed within your own organizations. Thirdly, we're collaborating across sectors in recognition of complexity and scale of the crisis, of course. So this coalition and this alliance of partners is really trying to find the best way that we can merge all of our work so that we can impact social entrepreneurs and the response effort which addresses them. Fourth, we look beyond healthcare, given that the crisis touches all areas of people's lives. And then finally, we're supporting the sort of shovel-ready solutions that grassroots organizations are already providing. And so on the right of this particular slide, you can see some of the stakeholder groups that we're addressing within the Alliance and who are a part of the Alliance already. They include intermediaries, impact investors, corporates, funders and philanthropists, and also government. So if you feel that you are within one of those groups, you can know that you likely have a place in the Alliance if you're not a part of it already. And I would be happy to sort of facilitate a discussion with you to talk about how we could include you in this effort into the future. And so over the past year, in coming together as 85 partners, we've also been able to identify a number of action clusters in which we really want to work and collaborate. They're included here on the list, so you can see regional mobilization, non-financial support, access to capital, corporate access, leadership and stewardship, storytelling, data and infrastructure, policy change, racial equity, and green businesses. So again, if you really feel that you are a part of any of these and have the capacity to support in any way, I'd really be keen to have a discussion with you about how we can onboard you into this great effort that we are putting forward. So now we're going to hop into the crux of the session. And just to give you a little bit of an idea of how we will go about it. Firstly, we're going to kick off with some keynote speeches from our speakers who are both entrepreneurs within our region. As I said, this alliance is really about putting the entrepreneurs first. So we're trying to do that even through the design of this session. So you'll hear from Ife and also hear from Abisola. And after that, we're going to break out into two groups where you'll be able to ask the speakers questions. But some of the other collaborators who I mentioned will also be present in those breakout rooms, sharing a bit about their perspective, their experience over the past year. And finally, you'll have the opportunity to sort of interact with everybody, share your own experience, and then we'll use that insight and information and harvesting to be able to find better ways to collaborate in the future. So without further ado, I'm going to invite Ife to deliver her keynote speech. And just by way of introduction of Ife, she's the program lead of Nourishing Africa, as I mentioned, which is a home for over 1 million agripreneurs within the region who are transforming the African agricultural landscape. Ife herself is a researcher. She has expertise in gender, maternal and adolescent health and nutrition. She has a master's in international relations. She also has a BA in sociology and gender transformation. So yeah, Ife, I'm going to hand it over to you, and please feel invited to take it away.
Thanks, Dr. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on where you are. And thank you for joining us. I'm really excited to be here. And I'm just going to start off by sharing my screen, and in the next 10 minutes, really discuss how social entrepreneurs, particularly agripreneurs, have been nourishing Africa's 2.5 billion people in the midst of the global pandemic. I'll discuss more about Nourishing Africa later, but I think it's important to set the tone and discuss Africa as a whole and when it comes to agriculture. So I work in the agriculture and food space within the continent. And when you look at the statistics, there's absolutely no reason why Africa should not be the breadbasket of the world. When we think about chocolate, we don't recognize that 70% of the cocoa that is produced in the world is done so in Africa. And the rooibos tea that we talk about across the world is produced and grown in the hills of South Africa. And based on this, you can see in terms of engagement, in terms of employment, agriculture is where it's at. Despite this, we see that despite the fact that entrepreneurs in particular manage and handle 80% of the food that's consumed on the continent, they are still considered the hidden middle. Oftentimes, these entrepreneurs have or lack access to information, to data, to funding, to often scale their businesses. And we see entrepreneurs and agribusinesses stay in the same spot for many years. They lack scaling, they don't partner. Oftentimes, they're inefficient business models, and they really can't get to the stage where we need them to be to become, and for us as a continent to become self-sufficient. These challenges have only been exacerbated by COVID-19. Last year, we did several studies and we saw that up to 50% of agribusinesses across the continent shut down either temporarily or indefinitely because they could not withstand the shocks of COVID-19. The border closures, the lack of cash flow, there were a range of reasons why these entrepreneurs and their businesses weren't able to withstand the shocks. But when we think about agriculture again, the math is really simple. If each person on the continent spends $1 on food, we would have an $876 billion industry. And the World Bank has estimated that the industry will be worth at least $1 trillion by 2030. So in essence, agriculture is an income stream for many entrepreneurs, for many communities and ecosystems. It's simply a case of finding how to ensure that we do this in a sustainable way and that's why we think it's really important that agribusinesses from farm to fork, grassroots to the very top, understand the needs when thinking about their business. We need an urgent change when it comes to business models. We need business models that can withstand both COVID-19 and future shocks, because there will be more future shocks. That means leveraging technology and data and information. And we saw that, of the 50% of businesses that were actually able to stay afloat during the first wave of COVID-19 were those that had leveraged technology and innovation within their business models prior to the pandemic, or those that were quickly able to implement it into their business models very early on. It's very important that we've seen that entrepreneurs are at the table, not just in a figurehead status, but making decisions, being present when policies and ecosystem changes are made, because they are most affected. In Nigeria, for instance, we saw that when we were talking about who was considered a essential worker, agriculture, farmers, processors, producers were not considered essential workers. And that we saw the repercussions of that nationally 3-4 weeks later when food prices skyrocketed in various parts of the country. And it was only at that point that we actually realized that, well, I guess the wider community realized that you need these people to be essential workers. Well, as I said, technology is driving the sector in various ways. Oftentimes we think about the lack of technology when we talk about Africa, but there's so many ways that we've implemented various tools and mechanisms from just basic, not smartphones, but basic phones that can be used to track sensors and your farms, to automated technologies, as I said, mobile applications, bioengineering in various parts of the country. But in all, it's really important to understand how technology can be used in agriculture. And we've seen that young entrepreneurs are showing the way. And in true Women's Month fashion, I have just showcased 3 incredible entrepreneurs across the continent that are doing incredible things, from local village foods who are producing ethical produce to Mongo Foods who are producing cassava for multi-purpose ways, and all the secrets in Nigeria, who are producing African recipes for child nutrition, really trying to break the cycle of malnutrition in children under 5 in Nigeria. We've also seen incredible business models emerging on the continent, from Cow Tribe, which is essentially the Uber for vets, where last mile farmers are able to access through basic phones and not even a smartphone, they're able to access veterinary services, medication information about their cows in Ghana. In Kenya, we have Twiga, who is essentially leveraging technology to accumulate and ensure that food is transferred from farm to fork. And there's so many, these are just two. All in all, for us at Nourishing Africa, and what I continuously preach is, it's important to position your business for success during COVID-19 and thereafter, because we're never going back to the way it was. And what is important in doing that, and there are various components, but the 5 that I want to highlight are building a robust and agile business model. Oftentimes we don't think about worst case scenarios and we think it will never hit, and that's what COVID-19 is. And those that really did think about worst case scenarios were those that were able to stay afloat, and some of them really thrive. We need to attract and retain talent, because when we think about talent, it's not just, in agriculture we say farmers, but it's more than just farmers. We need accountants, we need lawyers, we need a range of different stakeholders, and we need to attract the best. And the issue with agriculture as we know it is that it's not packaged and portrayed as a first choice. In the African context, if someone is studying agriculture, it's because they didn't get into their first, second, or maybe third choice. And it's between them going to university or not. And we need to change that. We need to change the curriculum. I'm a firm believer that agriculture should be a business, not a science. We should know the business of agriculture. When we think about funding, we need to ensure, and this goes then back to being a business, that you're investment ready. And what does that mean? And that would be taught if you were to take agriculture as a business. You need to know what is required by funders in order to get the investment that you seek to really scale your business. You need to create a compelling brand. We all have to eat, yes, but we eat with our eyes first, and that is the truth. So it's really important that people have these brands that attract you and want to see, and you want to try it, not knowing what it is or what it may be or what it does for you, but it needs to be compelling, it needs to be nutritious, it needs to be accessible. And we need to establish partnerships and networks within the continent and have a situation where we have African food by African food for Africans. And just to add, many of these points are added in Ndidi Okonkwo-Onwueli's book coming out next week, I think, called Food Entrepreneurs in Africa. She's really, really passionate about this topic. So I really encourage everyone to dive deeper into that. And this is where Nourishing Africa comes in. For us, we know that entrepreneurs really, really struggle with many of the components that I've spoken of. And what we do is try and provide a platform for these entrepreneurs to come together, to scale, to network, to partner, to be able to access critical information, whether it's data, tools, resources, information about the sector, and to be able to scale. For us, the bottom line is we really want to see grassroots and SMEs grow in the sector to be able for us to become net exporters of food by 2050, yes, but to become self-sufficient. It's very, very important that we build an ecosystem where we have nutritious, accessible, and affordable food. Given COVID-19, we thought it was extremely important to create a program that reached out to many of the agribusinesses that oftentimes you don't see. Agribusinesses that operate predominantly on WhatsApp or via phone call and those kinds of small businesses. So we created the COVID-19 Entrepreneur Support Program, which essentially trained, in partnership with the MasterCard Foundation and USAID, we're training 2,000 agribusinesses, predominantly women-led agribusinesses across 11 states in Nigeria, and essentially helping them retool and rebuild and pivot their businesses in order for them to be able to withstand the COVID-19 pandemic and further shocks. And we'll provide small grants to many of them as well. So when we think about impact, this is also a tricky question, but for us, we want to create a home for over 1 million entrepreneurs who really will define the agriculture and food space and see us reach our targets of becoming self-sufficient. And we are present in 35 out of the 54 countries. So we're well on our way and we're quite excited about this. So in closing, I want to discuss what can be done. What do we need to do as different stakeholders in the community? When we think of entrepreneurs, we really need to change the mindset and narrative around the potential of Africa. We need to advocate against dumping and food fraud in Africa. We need to partner with one another to scale. We need to work with integrity, transparency, and accountability, because that is essential. And we need to tell positive stories. Oftentimes you don't hear about the great things that are coming out of our continent, you only hear about the bad. When it comes to development partners, we need to advocate for a level playing field for African farmers and processors. We need to collaborate with partners of local practitioners and entrepreneurs. Oftentimes we see that when development partners come in, they partner with satellite companies and satellite businesses, but you need to partner with those on the ground that have been there prior and will be there after. And lastly, what I think is most important right now is don't design programs for those you're comfortable with and those you know. Design programs for those you don't see, for those that you rarely meet. Those are the people that need help. Design programs outside of your comfort zone. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for sharing, Ify. If we could clap, I'm sure you could hear the claps now. But yeah, really great presentation. And thank you so much for sharing your experience and also for sharing that call to action at the very end of what people can do in a practical sense for them to better address the needs that are out there. And so I'm going to share my screen very quickly again as I introduce our next speaker. Awesome. So our next speaker is Abisola Oladapo. She is a social entrepreneur and innovator within Nigeria, who is really innovating in the tech space, tech and health space. She's developed this business called Mumspring over the past few years and is really trying to create different ways of working and supporting women and children in health, essentially. Abisola has a bachelor's degree from MIT, I believe. Oh, sorry, no, that's wrong. From Columbia University. And she also has an MBA from London Business School. So Abisola, thank you so much for joining us. And I will leave it to you to share your experience.
Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're calling from. So just to rectify a few records, I studied electrical engineering at Howard University in DC, and my master's is from Columbia. So just, yeah. So I'm really excited to be here today. If someone could enable me share, I'm not able to share at the moment. That would be great, but I can keep moving. So yeah, my name is Abisola. I'm the founder of a company called Mumspring, and Mumspring really was inspired by some personal experiences that I had becoming a mom. About 4 years ago, when I had my baby, she was not able to breathe. After 1 week in the neonatal ICU, which seemed like 7 years to me because it was the longest week of my life, she happened to make it. But then there's over 1 million women in Africa who are not as lucky as I was. Who every single year in Africa, 1.1 million babies are dying due to mostly preventable reasons, according to the World Health Organization. And what we do at Mumspring is to use technology to create scalable solutions to be able to prevent this. I think now I'm able to share, so I will go ahead and do that. Here we go. I think you can see my screen now. So what we've done at Mumspring is just to give you more context around the problem. Like I mentioned, within a neonate or a newborn is defined according to the World Health Organization as a child that's under 30 days old. And right now in Africa, we're losing over 1 million of those babies every single year. 57% of all maternal deaths in the world are happening in Africa. And 80% of these deaths should not be happening. And I'm sure you're wondering what's causing this and what the issues are. One of the key things that we found in our research over the past few years is that 67% of women are having their babies without the help of a medically trained midwife or other kind of medically trained support person in Africa. And this usually is as a result of poor education in terms of understanding what the health system can provide and what the benefits are, and more comfort with more local methods of having children, which then presents issues in the event that there's a complication during delivery or otherwise. So what we do at Mumspring is we've created a solution that enables women to reach antenatal health education in their preferred language. Today, we're in Nigeria, available in all the Nigerian languages, and we are scaling to South Africa and Kenya before the end of the year. And our mission there is by providing this health education, women are then able to make better decisions for their health during their pregnancy and beyond. Additionally, they have 24/7 access to midwives throughout their pregnancy. And I'm sure you're wondering, so why does this matter? Is it just 1 million women? So in Africa today, we have over 100 million women of childbearing age. This should say, actually, no, in Africa, it's 200 million. Sorry, this is showing Nigeria. In Africa today, we have over 200 million of women of childbearing age. And this creates such a huge market opportunity that is otherwise missed if we don't continue to create innovations for these women. There are very few tech-enabled solutions directly targeting maternal health right now. There's a lot of NGO activity in that space, but none that are very scalable. And what we're trying to do is use technology to make sure that we can reach as many women as quickly as possible, because these deaths are happening every day, whether we like it or not. So what's the importance of partnerships in being able to reach these women? Because we have so many women across Africa that need to be supported over the next few years, and we have the SDG goals that we need to meet by 2030, it's important that organizations are able to partner, either insurance companies and entities that are focused on enabling maternal health for women. Today, some of the partnerships that we've benefited from include, for example, the Impact Hub that has provided a platform where we can reach other similar types of companies that are socially focused and have a social mandate to support women. This has been really amazing in being able to scale what we do. And through the Impact Hub, actually, we've reached partners that are able to also provide translations so that we can reach and penetrate more markets quicker. So I'm really excited about this opportunity to discuss about what kinds of partnerships are possible, not just from a funding perspective, but what partnerships can do in terms of providing additional resources, additional insights, and to also enable evolution of business models to be able to reach as many women as possible, no matter where she is in Africa, no matter whether she has a phone or otherwise. The other thing I need to mention is that our technology works independent of the internet and independent of how much airtime the woman has. And we squarely target low-income women, who are the women who are less likely to be able to have this type of life-saving information. And that's it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that, Abisola.
You're welcome.
Yeah, great to hear from you, and also for the call to action on thinking of ways in which we can collaborate to impact in this area. So for now, Abisola, if you don't mind just unsharing your screen, and I will reshare mine. So now it's a chance for all of you to be able to interact directly with our keynote speakers, but also with some of the other collaborators that we have on the call with us today. So what we're going to do over the next 40 minutes is to break out into 2 different rooms. You can see on the left and on the right who will be in which room. So if you'd like to, for example, ask Ife a question, you're welcome to join room 1. If you'd like to ask Abisola a question, you're welcome to join room 2. But in addition to them, you're also going to be hearing from Mariana Nunes, from Dr. Frank Aswani, from Kevin Richardson, from Caroline De Bruyne, and also from Drew Van Glaan. So for now, I will ask the support team to help us to break up into those 2 rooms, where we will spend 40 minutes, and then we'll come back and share some of the learnings from the breakout session. Yeah, I thought I was hopping in between both rooms, and it seemed like there was a really inspired discussion on both sides. So I really appreciate everybody who was contributing and listening intently. We have a few minutes just to continue the discussion, actually, right here, maybe cross-pollinating the 2 breakout rooms a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to invite Mariana just to speak a little bit about some of the key points that were coming out in her breakout room. And then I'll ask Kevin to do the same. And then maybe we can hear from some of the panelists of what they think of the perspectives from the other side. But yeah, Mariana, please go ahead.
Thank you, Tapiwa, and thank you all that were breakout room 1. We had a great discussion, and I'm going to try to give you the main points because I took loads of notes of our discussion here. So we spoke about the resilience of African entrepreneurs, and COVID shows us that as well, the way they managed to adapt and really go through the crisis. We talked about avoid putting more money always into the same entrepreneurs, that we have to go beyond. We have to get out of the comfort zones as investors, as funders, look into other entrepreneurs. A mix of different type of capital to support impact businesses. So grants usually working more to de-risk investments. For instance, piloting a specific activity first, so then investors can come in and really invest to scale that. We talked about the very importance of educating investors and entrepreneurs in Africa. So making entrepreneurs investment ready, but also aligning on the expectations on the investor side. And Frank was also said something that I really enjoyed, which was, because I asked like why there's so much capital but not being deployed. So education on what it's really like to invest in Africa don't come with a Western mindset, but not only for Western funders, but even for African funders as well, African investors. So we really have to understand how to build a better pipeline, but aligning expectations on both ends. And on that, the importance of co-creating programs with your funders, aligning milestones, and also choosing the investors you want to work with that align with your values, that resonates with your business. And also, as Frank said, that are investors I wouldn't get money from. So it's really important to have that clear in your minds. And Africa is the best sandbox for impact. These are a few of the key points that I got here from our discussion. It was really nice, the real engagement from the participants. So thank you all.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Mariana. Yeah, some really great points coming out there. And I want to maybe invite some of the panelists from the other room to respond. I think especially on this point of Africa being a sandbox of innovation, and maybe I could pose a question to Drew. In terms of Africa being the sandbox of innovation, what are some sort of exciting opportunities that you are seeing to push more resources from where you are into the region? What is most exciting you at this point?
Well, the collaborative, we focus on the capital side. So I know that's the really exciting part that everybody wakes up every morning thinking about is money. But no, it's, really, again, most people here are rightly focused on what are they doing on the ground, the people that they're affecting and how they're supporting them. So, but we're focused more at this very boring side of the capital. And therefore, saying excitement may not fit into everybody here. So don't fall off your seats with the excitement that I may discuss. But for me, what I think I'm fundamentally seeing is, and the last 2 weeks, I may have mentioned earlier, or at least in our breakout, we hosted 70 local capital providers operating across Africa. And we have started to redefine these capital, and these are ones focusing on early stage businesses, so ones that need anywhere from 25,000 US equivalent up to $500,000. And that itself is a pretty broad range of needs and timeframes of business models. But what's exciting about this is we're actually referring to them now as alternative local capital providers. They are no longer the same old 2 and 20 equity model coming out of Silicon Valley, nor are they these ones coming out of NGOs to do good, but with a kind of impact lens. They're really addressing the local needs, the businesses as they are on the ground, with the capital that they're putting more flexible capital structures to that. So to me, what's exciting is, for once, we're really seeing local markets drive the alignment of the needs of the businesses with the institutional capital out there. Do we have a long way to go? Yes. So this is a sandbox in that point, in the sense we need it to be the whole playground, or whatever the right analogy is to expand beyond the sandbox. But that's what we're seeing, is really knowledgeable people in their local markets solving early stage capital problems.
Great. Thanks so much for sharing that perspective, Drew. And maybe following on from that, Carolyn, if I can put a question to you, in terms of the piece around, co-creation from local perspectives to international sort of perspectives, and maybe from your side, coming from the Alliance, sort of what opportunities are you seeing for that co-creation and collaboration to happen, maybe within the clusters of the Alliance, but also just, trying to bridge the local and the international / global.
Thank you, Tapio. Well, I should really just put that question back to you, because as our regional lead, I think you're going to be leading that co-creation process with us. I think for me, there's at kind of that global level, there's a lot of conversation around the innovation and looking for innovations and scaling. And I think for me, what I've been looking for within the Alliance, given that is a group of 85 existing leaders in social entrepreneurship, is to really start with them. Also the process that we've been running to determine our collaboration roadmap was literally to ask our members, what do you want to be working on, right? And what is most urgent for you? And maybe even already, what are you already doing, so that we can actually take those existing live operations and programs, which are already lie also at the core of these member organizations, and see how we can layer on and make it bigger. And that to me is kind of just also, given that we're in a hurry and given that our resources are limited, to me, this is much more around taking the existing activity that has promise and that we, I think, as a collective feel is well designed, and then see how we can layer on and basically have the right people play on the right part of the pitch. With, you know, Tapio, with your work with Impact Hub in Africa and the network that you already have and the programs that you're already running, that's been one starting point. Drew, with his work with the Collaborative for Frontier Finance, there's just so much amazing work already being done. He is, per his point just now, is bringing, you know, the 70 local capital providers together. And so I'm now looking with my network and with the World Economic Forum to see how we can then make sure, or help to then make the right connections to some of the global capital. So it's building on and layering on rather than starting from scratch. I would say that I think, or at least that I hope, is going to be that key for co-creation in a way that also still allows us to make a difference in 2021 and not just in 2030.
Great, thanks so much for sharing, Carolyn. I like the idea of building and leveraging on the work that's already being done. I think I'm already seeing a lot of that happening within the Alliance, and I'm hoping that the participants here will be interested to join the Alliance and continue doing that work with us. But now handing it over to Breakout Room 2, to Keva, you know, some of the key points that were coming out of that breakout room, what really stood out to you?
Yeah, thanks to Piwa. So yeah, we had a very interesting discussion. Some of the themes that came out of it, I'm going to try to summarize as best as possible. The question was posed to Caroline in terms of now that, you know, this COVID you know, situation is going to last for a couple more months, maybe even years. What do you think the next phase? And just building off of the, you know, discussions, I guess a question that you just asked her, she felt that inclusive recovery was really important. So the key there being collaborations, getting the financial resources to the people that are able to do the work on the ground. And then also building off that, the point was also made in the discussion that at this point, you know, a lot of organizations are just focused on your own survival. And so what is really important to unlocking indicated collaboration is leaning more into the complexity, you know, trade-offs with the short-term benefits and open pipelines and share organizations they'd like to work with. And so one of the things that came out of it that was really important to know is that collaboration is an art. It's not a science, which is very true. It's a good way to summarize it. And then moving on to discussion, we also asked Drew, and he shared with us his views on some of the learnings have been over the past year in the COVID response. The discussion that we had was that we feel that collectively, not individually or even individual sectors or businesses, you know, we could definitely work on having a much stronger response. And then also in terms of what entrepreneurs need, you know, who's providing what type of capital and what their needs. So entrepreneurs should focus or should think about who is going to best address your needs, right? Identifying those needs, and then when looking for capital, who will best fit what you're looking for.
Great, thanks so much for sharing that, Keva. I'm hearing a lot of collaboration, a lot of collective action. And so I'm going to pose the question to Frank around sort of you know, as AVPA, you're seeing what's happening in the capital space within the region. You know, what do you feel could be done to create more collaborations from a funding perspective with the venture philanthropists that you're working with, but also within the ecosystem? You know, what opportunities are there for sort of more collaboration?
Yeah, I think the first thing is to recognize that the problem we're trying to solve is huge, and we can't solve it on our own. And there's a real scarcity of capital to support some of our social enterprise and SMEs broadly. And we broadly are also facing, as I was mentioning in our panel, we're facing a really difficult challenge on the continent where aid is reducing. So grant capital, and that has a ripple effect on grant capital available on the continent. And we need to be smart how we deploy the capital. And some of these solutions could come in just how we really leverage our grant capital right now to unlock private capital. And the collaboration between grant makers and private capital providers is very important at this point in time to unlock a lot more of the private capital that's available to a scale that exceeds what we need in this space generally. So I think creating awareness of the crisis we're facing, creating the enhanced power that we could deliver jointly as different types of players than we could on our own is important. And so there's a lot of investor education that also needs to happen around that, especially around our grant makers. So we are also doing some stuff around just educating grant makers to help them transition from just being traditional grant makers to also being catalytic investors and providing some of that support to early stage businesses and stuff. So those are the kind of things that we're looking to do.
Excellent. Thanks so much for sharing that, Frank. And so now that we are wrapping up a little bit, just 5 minutes to go, I wanted to pose a question to the audience and allow you to share your perspectives. So the first question to all of you is, who are your dream partners from this particular session? Maybe it's a couple of the panelists, a couple of the keynote speakers, sort of share two examples of people who you think, you know, after this session, we'd really like to connect with more directly. And then the second question is, which social enterprise anywhere in the world are you aware of that deserves more recognition than they're getting right now? So I'll invite the audience to respond to those two questions. And while those inputs are coming in on the chat, Abisola and Ife, I've not forgotten about you in this part of the session. I think one last question that I have to each of you is, looking ahead, sort of what is the one thing that you would need in order to sort of transform yourselves within the context of the COVID response? What would help your organization, your business to really grow in the next stage? And I would first ask Abisola, you know, what does this mean for Mumspring? And please, audience, do share your perspectives in the chat on the questions.
I think if I had to will that one, the one key thing that would transform things for us would be a partnership with either an insurance provider that could enable us to reach women at scale across different African countries, because our technology is able to scale across countries, and it takes us just 3 weeks to localize, and really the key question then becomes ability for the women to afford it. So insurance partners that either have Pan-African reach would be a big deal for us, and a game changer really, because it will also provide access to markets.
Fantastic. Well, that's clear for the audience. Insurance providers, if you're out there, Abisola is looking for you. The question to Ife as well. What do you think could help Nourishing Africa to really transform in this moment?
I think for us, it would be an impact investor that understands the landscape, the agriculture and food landscape in Africa. One that understands the importance of the training and the back work of getting these entrepreneurs and these agribusinesses to the stage of investments. So supporting those that support ESOs and organizations such as that. I think that's a game changer. Fantastic.
Thanks so much for sharing, Ife. So lastly, as we come into the last couple of minutes of the session, I just wanted to walk you through a few of the calls to action for various stakeholders within the ecosystem that we're trying to address as the Alliance. So we're calling for impact investors to adapt their investment priorities and processes and to provide flexible capital as well as must-have technical assistance. So impact investors, if you're out there, that one's for you. We're calling for funders and philanthropies to expand and expedite their support to social entrepreneurs and intermediaries taking risks relative of the day's unprecedented times. We're calling on corporates to stand with social entrepreneurs within their supply chains and their ecosystems, fulfill their agreements and help build more inclusive and resilient economy. We're also calling for governments to recognize social entrepreneurs as a driving force in safeguarding jobs and in pioneering a greener and more equitable society, and to back them accordingly. And lastly, for the intermediaries to provide fitting support to social entrepreneurs and communities that they serve, and to make known the needs and priorities of entrepreneurs on the ground. So I thank you all for joining the session. I think you've heard the calls to action, you've heard the perspectives of the entrepreneurs themselves. You'll be able to connect with them if you'd like. I'm sure we can share around some contact information for those who are keen to connect. But in case you'd like to learn more about the Alliance, how we're working together, and how you can be able to join in the effort, my email is here on the slide at tapiwa.nyandoro@impacthub.net. Yeah, but for now, I'll thank you all for joining and hopefully see you next time. Oh, and before you go, thank you to all of the panelists for all of your time and effort in preparing for the session and delivering your pieces. Yeah, really appreciate you stepping up to share your perspectives. Thank you so much.